nothing but betrayals by the petty bourgeois elements in our society. The African bourgeoisie is the most corrupt bourgeoisie in the world. In Africa, they seek luxury in the midst of mass suffering.
For what is what, I ain't trying to round my luck, this game up. I ain't trying to show skills so the brothers paid up. Emotions got me feeling like one time, like a fade up. I wanna talk all that money, but I ain't got my weight up. Now I see life like trading knuckles in a fist fight. The insight that I acquire from the skills and eyesight. The street life you glorify is a mean life. The weak, strong, wicked, everybody living still dies. Back in the days I used to master these rap shit, rapping fantastic. Flick words like vocal gymnastics. Started with some slow words like nigga is spastic. I melt mics with these words like fire to plastics. I really miss them days. We used to throw dice, barefooted, now we making dough. We're buying 2 Nikes, taking misses on the cruise, dinner in the moonlight. We having dinner stuck in black history like 2 shots.
But you must not think that they represent the people. They only represent their opportunistic self, using the people every step of the way.
Hey you, I'm sleeping, I'm falling, I'm reaching out to higher powers. The God in me, the God in you, not the Messiah liars.
What's good, African family? Welcome back to the African Wahala. That was my good friend God MC with the beautiful rap song. I can share the link in the description if you're interested, or I can direct you to acquiring that music. But today's video is going to be about comparing 2 West African countries, Nigeria and Ghana. It's very important we make some of these comparisons because it's a teachable moment. It allows a lot of us to dispel some misconceptions that we had, especially people that are not from these regions and maybe they have plans of visiting or conducting business or maybe relocating. So it's important we come up with some characteristics of both countries to determine the standard of living of the people. And we are coming up with 5 attributes to demonstrate the standard of living between Nigeria and Ghana. We're going to be comparing the GDP per capita, life expectancy at birth, literacy, education level, access to health care, and poverty and inequality rates. Now, some of these data might be rough estimates because, numbers change all the time, and we also have relevant sources. But the most important thing is the numbers would reflect some of the most recent numbers that were released by the Bureau of Statistics from both countries and international organizations. So let's jump into it quickly, starting with the GDP per capita. Nigeria's GDP per capita as at 2021, according to Statistica, is estimated to be $2,000 per annum. So it's $2,000 that an average Nigerian generates per annum. But those numbers have drastically reduced because this is coming from 2021. In comparing what Ghana has, from a 2024 IMF estimate, Ghana's GDP per capita is $2,230. So basically, an average Ghanaian is able to generate $2,030 per annum. Based on those 2 numbers, you can maybe come to a conclusion on what country you might benefit from in terms of revenue generation. Nigeria ranks 3rd in West Africa in terms of GDP per capita, behind Ghana and Cape Verde. And we also need to know that Ghana's economy benefits from a diverse exportation of natural resources, especially gold, cocoa, and some oil. The GDP's growth has been consistent, and in 2024, Ghana experienced a 5.7 growth in their GDP. So, in comparing both countries, Ghana has a slightly higher GDP per capita, and it's an indication of a marginally better standard of living on average. However, both countries are still low income economies, so we need to put that out there. Now, let's compare our second metric between Nigeria and Ghana. The metric is the life expectancy at birth. In Nigeria, approximately 55.7 years was the 2022 estimate for life expectancy, and it's among the lowest in West Africa, ranking 15th in the region. The average in the sub Saharan African area is 61.2 years. So in sub Saharan Africa, an average person, the average life expectancy at birth is 61.2. And Nigeria currently ranks at 55.7 years. For Ghana, it's 64.1 years, according to a 2021 WHO estimate. Ghana's life expectancy at birth is significantly higher than Nigeria because if you compare 64 to 55, and it's also higher than the average in sub-Saharan Africa. So based on that second metric, Ghana outperforms Nigeria by about 8 years. And that indicates an overall better health condition and healthcare access to healthcare in Ghana compared to Nigeria. Now let's talk about the third metric. It has to do with the literacy and education level. And keep in mind, these metrics are very important in understanding how a society works and determining the standard of living of the people of the society. That's why we're coming up with these crucial metrics. As far as literacy and educational levels, the in Nigeria, adult literacy rate is approximately 62%, but that is from a 2018 estimate, UNESCO. The Nigerian educational system faces a lot of challenges from overcrowded classrooms, shortages in teachers, and low investment. And also, if you compare the percentage allocated to education in Nigeria from the national budget, it's low. The Human Capital Index indicates that Nigerian children achieve only 36% of their potential productivity due to limited education access. Mean years of schooling are around 6.7 years, with expected years of schooling supposed to be 10.2 years. So that is the performance of Nigeria as far as literacy and educational level. So let's compare those numbers with Ghana. In Ghana, the average literacy rate is 80.4%, according to the same UNESCO 2018 estimate. So comparing those two numbers, Ghana stands, or rather, Ghana stood at 80% and Nigeria stood at 62% adult literacy rate. Ghana invests more in education from its GDP. Actually, about 4.5% of the GDP goes to education, improving the quality of schools, the educational infrastructure, universities, secondary schools. And the mean schooling age in Ghana is, or rather, the mean years of schooling in Ghana is 7.8 years. And it's expected to be 11.6 years, but they are currently doing 7.8. If you want to compare those numbers to Nigeria, it's 6.7 years by 10.2 years. So the mean years of schooling is around 6.7 years, but it's supposed to be 10.2 years in Nigeria. With that being said, Ghana definitely has a higher literacy rate and better education metrics than Nigeria. There are more quality schools, there is better access to education, and there is better educational infrastructure in Ghana compared to Nigeria. Let's go to the fourth metric, access to healthcare. In Nigeria, the access to healthcare is severely limited, with about 74% of healthcare funding coming from out of pocket payments. And it's the highest in sub Saharan Africa. Okay. There are only 4 physicians per 10,000 people in Nigeria. And that is far below the WHO recommendations, World Health Organization. There are only 68% of the population that has access to clean water, 29% has access to improved sanitation, and these factors contribute to a higher level or higher dominance of diseases. Um, you know what I'm talking about, right? Infirmities. It's more common in Nigeria based on the access to healthcare. Public healthcare is underfunded. 20% of total healthcare funding is done by the public, and the rest of the 80% is left to the private people to cater for themselves. So, this generally leads to poor service quality and a higher migration of healthcare workers, right? The brain drain situation. Now, let's compare those numbers to Ghana. In Ghana, they have a better healthcare system with 88.7% of households having access to improved water sources and higher health system coverage. Out of pocket payments are much lower, and infant immunization rates are higher than what they have in Nigeria. Ghana's healthcare expenditure is about 4% of the GDP, similar to education. It's also similar to Nigeria. However, the outcomes are different because Ghana has a much more effective primary healthcare system and sanitation. Under 5 mortality, or rather, I'm talking about kids that are under 5 years old. The mortality in among kids in that age range is much more lower than it is in Nigeria. It's actually less than half of what it is in Nigeria, comparing the percentages. So, in general, if you're comparing the access to healthcare between Nigeria and Ghana, Ghana provides a significantly better access to healthcare with stronger infrastructure, lower out of pocket costs, and a better health outcome compared to Nigeria. So we've had 4 metrics so far: access to healthcare, literacy and education level, life expectancy at birth, and GDP per capita. And in each one of these 4 categories, Ghana is absolutely dusting Nigeria. Now let's go to the fifth category, the last one for the purpose of this presentation: poverty and inequality rates. In Nigeria, the poverty rate is, according to the World Bank, 39%. But in real life, 70% of Nigerians, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, 75% of Nigerians are living in multi-dimensional poverty. All right. The lower slash middle income poverty rate is about $4 a day, and it's 70% of the population. Income inequality is high, and the GINI coefficient is approximately 35.1. Nigeria's poverty reduction has been extremely slow. And if we are being honest, it's reverse. It's been increasing. The poverty rate in Nigeria has actually been increasing, especially in the last 12 years. Now let's compare those numbers with Ghana. The poverty rate in Ghana, according to Statistica from 2021, is 11%. But I highly doubt. I think the poverty rate in Ghana is much more higher. I didn't get the opportunity to research what they have in their Bureau of Statistics to confirm what they produced. But I gave you what the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics produced, 75%. Right? Ghana's GINI coefficient is 43. So comparing that to Nigeria's 35, Ghana is doing better. All these factors indicate a higher income inequality than what they have in Nigeria. However, Ghana's poverty alleviation programs are a little bit more effective, but absolute reduction or ending poverty is nearly impossible, right? But if we're comparing both countries as far as performance in poverty reduction and access to basic amenities and standard of living, Ghana is definitely doing better, right? Now, we might also think about the population. Unfortunately, Nigeria's population is unknown because the last credible population census was held in 1991, 34 years ago. This video was made in June 23rd, 2025. And the last credible population census that Nigeria held was in 1991. About 80 million people, thereabout. So today, 2025, all we have is an estimate of Nigeria's population. Nobody knows the actual numbers. They just know that there are a ton of people in Nigeria. So Nigeria's population is about 227 million if you go on Google, but those numbers are not correct. But let's assume that those are the correct numbers. Ghana's population is 33 million people in 2025 June. The wealthiest man in Nigeria, Aliko Dangote, I'm not sure how much it's worth. Google says it's $23 billion. The wealthiest man in Ghana, Ernest Tarikoni, is worth $1.1 billion. Ernest Tarikoni is an Italian, just so you know, but he is the wealthiest man in Ghana. That's a bad look, if I'm being honest. That's not a good look. I know that's horrible, but it's part of the African Wahala. Should I call it wealthiest or richest cities between Nigeria and Ghana are Lagos and Accra, respectively. And the GDP of Lagos is $130 billion. That doesn't even make sense. But let's pretend those are the numbers. While Accra's GDP is 19 billion. Okay, that's cool. Okay, now these are actual numbers of 2025 June. GDP per capita in Nigeria is $1,596. And the GDP per capita in Ghana is $2,260. So far, what do you think? Comparing Ghana to Nigeria. I still have some metrics to share with you. So we can have more comparison between both countries and you can maybe come to your own conclusion on what country you think is better. The numbers are factual. And based on the numbers, already Ghana is a better country than Nigeria. Already, okay? The only thing that Nigeria has over Ghana is the population and the size of the economy. However, the population or the size of the economy is not really relevant if the standard of living of the people is abmis abmis oh my god, this word is not flowing properly. Abysmal. If the standard of living of the people is abysmal in a country and they have a huge economy, then it's irrelevant. The huge economy is irrelevant if the standard of living of the people is horrible. Okay. We spoke about the capitals: Accra, Nigeria, Accra, Ghana, Abuja, Nigeria. These are the wealthiest men in both countries: Aliko Dangote and Ernest Tarikon. Let's talk about something more relevant. I'm looking at some metrics here that are not really relevant. They're comparing the most expensive material things. Those don't really determine what country is better. But overall, based on the five metrics that we demonstrated, speaking about the GDP per capita, life expectancy at birth, literacy and education levels, access to healthcare, and poverty and inequality rates, Ghana is a better country than Nigeria. But what do you think? Let me know what you think in the comment section. If you like this type of content, click on the like button and subscribe. You can also recommend some other comparisons that you want. The main reason I made this video is to showcase the actual numbers. You know, there is a popular saying, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't lie. The numbers clearly indicate that Ghana is a better country than Nigeria. But people are going to argue because people are super emotional and sentimental to what they love. But let me know what you think in the comment section. Click on the like button and subscribe. Peace.